Hey guys, Sausage here. Released onto Steam on January 24th, 2025, Benign Land is a short, dreamlike walking simulator where you drift through haunting scenes set in Northern Ireland from pagan times to recent historical events revolving around the Troubles. I do want to preface this review by saying Benign Land contains political, religious, and historical depictions related to the conflict known as the Troubles in Northern Ireland. These themes may be triggering to some, so caution is advised. With that out of the way, let's start the review. Since I've already mentioned that the game is about the Troubles in Northern Ireland, I suppose the best place to start the review is at the story. As I stated, this is a dreamlike walking sim where you explore the history of Northern Ireland. Unfortunately, I am not Irish, nor am I a Northern Ireland historian. The most I know about the Troubles is from the song Zombie by the Cranberries. I think that there was a religious element to the conflict between Catholics and Protestants, I think, but even then, I'm not 100% sure. Benign Land is meant to be an artistic experience about the Troubles in Ireland, but I left the game at best with no further understanding of the conflict, and at worst, more questions after playing than I did before I started. The game has you travel through different scenes in dreamlike settings, but without context, I can only guess as to what's happening. Some games can pull off this storytelling strategy, but there are not many models and assets for the player to inspect, and even then, the lighting is so dark that, like I said, without context, I was left guessing as to exactly what I was looking at and what impression it was meant to leave on me. As for the graphics, the game looks incredible. I want to assume this game was developed in Unreal Engine, but I'm not entirely sure. At first, I was unsure about how I felt about the graphics, as it is quite dark and hard to see everything, but after the first level or two, that dreamlike quality started to grow on me. While I understand that the developer made the game dark to invoke a dreamlike feeling, less is more here. Some levels have a red glow in the background or have spotlights in interesting places, which adds to the feeling of the experience being a nightmare, but the levels that don't have these elements just feel unnecessarily dark for no reason. Lastly, I want to talk about how much time I spent playing the game. Overall, I spent 30 minutes on the game, but really, this game can be completed in 15. The developer does advertise this game taking 30 to 45 minutes to complete, but I finished it in just 15 minutes. The reason I spent an extra 15 minutes playing the Benign Land is because the entire game is a loop. I figured if I kept playing that perhaps I would find a new path, route, level, scene, whatever you want to call it, but after replaying half the game a second time, after carefully looking around, I can speak with near certainty that this game is just a loop with no real ending. While I can understand why someone may introduce an element like this to their game, I just can't really understand why it was implemented in this game. Perhaps the developer was trying to introduce a feeling of never-endingness or like a perpetual unease, uncertainty, or even nightmare, but this looping mechanic, if you can call it that, just doesn't work. Benign Land costs $5, and for something that only lasts 15 minutes, I just can't justify it. The developer may have spent a decent penny on whatever engine they used, or perhaps they feel $5 justifies the time and effort spent creating the game, or maybe the developer just decided this game feels like it is worth $5, but regardless, the price is just too high. With all of that said, I give Benign Land a rating of 4.3 sausages out of 10. I love the idea that this game is an interactive art installation about the Troubles of Northern Ireland. Unfortunately, if you don't know anything about this conflict in this time period, then you won't have any idea what's going on. What I would recommend to the developer is to add a text window explaining what is going on the scene, or perhaps even a commentary mode where someone talks to the player like it's a guided audio tour. Without these elements, anyone without knowledge of the Troubles is going to have a confusing experience about what happened in Northern Ireland. As for the graphics, some places are quite dark and it makes it a little difficult to see, not to mention there aren't many assets to allow the player to infer what's going on. Yes, there are some scenes that have models such as barbed wire, which speaks for itself, but aside from these small assets, I cannot tell what is supposed to be going on, which ties back into the story. My recommendation would be to make the game less dark, but then the next issue is perhaps the lack of assets in the game. Some games can look good while being empty, but I cannot comment on that because, well, it's too dark and I just can't tell. As for the price tag, my plain and simple feedback is to drop it to $1 or $2. While at the time of this review, Benign Land has 13 reviews, leaving this game with a 92% positive rating, what will happen when 13 more people buy this game? Are 12 of those 13 customers going to be happy spending $5 on a game that just loops after 15 minutes? I sure know I would be demanding a refund. My advice would be to wait until this game is 50% off at the very minimum. And that's my review of Benign Land. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, and I have a Discord as well for both casual viewers and content creators alike, so consider joining me on both of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my review here. Mahoney out.